Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. I saw the movie last night. I was very impressed with it. I imagine it was done kind of on a very low budget and very limited time schedule, but if every single element of it really worked in terms of like the cinematography, the acting, the score, everything came together. I mean, how much time did you have to make this film then?
We were shooting for about a month.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a good amount of time.
Yeah, I think we really, we lucked out in the sense that it was a very contained story. So even though our schedule was pretty quick for a feature, we didn't have a ton of moves, and that really helped us be able to distill the time well.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That always helps. And it's nice how weather is always sort of a wonderfully ominous character in horror movies, be it the wind or the fog or the mist, or I'm always waiting for the smog. Movie about the smog.
Oh God, we're living that one in LA.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the smog is coming. Oh, you're new to town, okay. But anyway, what especially attracted you both to the wind as a weather element to the story?
Well, I mean, I thought it was so powerful that it was that the name of the film was a sound, and that the main thing that was terrorizing our lead character at the end of the day was something of that environment, and it was that sound. So I think it was literal, it was metaphorical, it was all the things that something as big as an element is of nature, and that was so fun to play with, and something we can all relate to because we all experience it on some level.
Yeah, and I mean, Teresa Sutherland, the writer, I remember her telling this story of she is from Kansas, and she was working out in a field one day with these older women, and it was so windy that they couldn't speak to each other. And then as they were coming back and they got into this wind tunnel where they could speak, one of the women was like, oh, finally we can speak again. And then she just was, casually was like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, it used to drive all the women mad. And Teresa basically was like, tell me more. And so she had this fascination and this curiosity about how a natural element like that could drive someone to madness. And so I think what was really exciting for us filming too was that the wind was actually present. So we had, Emma can attest, she had wind machines come prepared to be there for us, but it was so windy. And it was, the element of it was truly there, so the wind, the sound of the wind sort of seeping through the walls or sort of hugging the house, or when you step outside just being sort of accosted by it, really affected your presence in that space, you know what I mean? And having that literal interaction with it, really brought the sensation to life and allowed me to not only understand it conceptually, but actually to experience it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's nice when the natural elements come into play.
Yeah.
And you have a number of scenes in this movie where you have no dialogue, and you have to communicate things through your face, which is always a big challenge of film acting. How did you go about preparing your character for those particular moments?
We shared a lot of factual information, which, they gave me a lot of books of the time, which just helps create sort of a ground to stand on. And then I did, a lot of sort of body work to get into her sort of physical state. She's an incredibly physical being. Most of her time is spent doing laboring tasks, and when you are in that kind of a repetition or a routine, it is almost this meditative state of forgetting yourself. And so allowing myself to be immersed in that environment, having a really incredible art department that gave so many details to play with and bring those physicalities to life, and then having a director who basically supported and gave me the trust I needed to really go off the deep end, knowing that someone was going to be there to throw me a life raft when I needed it, was what allowed me the freedom to just forget about myself and be totally invested in that moment.
That's great.
Yeah, it was really special.
It's not always an easy place to reach,
Yeah.
I mean, roles like this, it can be easy to fall into the trap of emoting, but you and Juliet never did that. which is especially impressive because, I mean, you feel the madness of the character. You don't doubt the hell she is in, you know. And I was very impressed by that because I don't think you always see that, especially like in horror movies. You know, as Julia was pointing out the other night, that, you know, a lot of female characters in horror movies are usually treated poorly or just not very bright. And I like the characters in this movie are very strong in general. I mean, that must have appealed to you, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, Julia and I have talked about this, and I thought about this a lot, but as far as what these characters as women of that time needed to have to survive, you know, Julia Goldani tells this character, Emma, was raised in a society where her sensuality and her sexuality was a means to, you know, get up the ranks of societal echelons, and that was what was the importance of surviving. And then when you take those cultural values and put them into a rustic environment, that all of a sudden becomes completely useless. And so her means of, you know, approaching approaching Lizzie's husband was purely more so out of survival, because her husband was useless. And so she was using her only means to get to what was going to help her survive, you know? And so it was just so fascinating to look at these two very different women who were from very different environments and looking at what they were what their values were and how those were tested in these circumstances.
Absolutely.
And so it went beyond, you know, female tropes to just these sort of cultural identities.
Yeah, I like that a lot because, yeah, a lot of tropes, a lot of people make horror films, they fall back on those tropes. In this movie, those tropes are just put to the side, which I loved because it makes it more unique and more thoughtful to the time that the movie takes place in. And the screenplay was presented to both of you in a very nonlinear fashion. And I was curious how you dealt with that. I mean, did you try to put everything in order, or did you just, how did you deal with that?
We did. Teresa and I did a couple passes of the script together, and one of the ways that I got inside it as we were doing that process was reading it in order. And there was a moment actually where I said to her, like, are we sure we shouldn't do it in order? Is this definitely the structure to tell the story in? And then I read it in order, and I was like, it's lost all its power, you know? And she wrote it, not, you know, she didn't write it in order and then mix it back up. She wrote it in a nonlinear way, which I think was completely... it was like stepping inside the character of Lizzie, our main character, and I think that without that structure, you would have lost a lot of the empathy and the engagement with her. But then, Caitlin just mentioned this earlier, and I totally forgot. I think it was like that linear version of the script was completely the guiding compass for also understanding her arc. So I think we were shooting it out of order. Obviously, it was, you know, at the end of the day, cut out of order. But I think that understanding the order of Lizzie's journey was really imperative for both of us.
Yeah.
For you in terms of performance.
Yeah, exactly. I think for me, because they gave, I mean, I requested it too, but they also had this order so that I could track an arc and an evolution, which helped me in this very disorienting nonlinear state, but that also helped the character. But I also, you know, hearing you talk just now made me realize in a way that when Teresa wrote the first draft, you know, she wrote it in like a month or something. And, you know, I can sense now, hearing you say this incredible like stream of consciousness that she had. So when she was tapping into that character, just this like flow of consciousness that is a non-linear experience. And so I think that the fact that that maintained integral to its structure is sort of the exciting thing about this script, because there was not much done in the sense of texture to allow us to know which world we were in. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, now we're suddenly in like a very bright palette, we're in the past, or now we're in a much darker color, we're in the future, you know what I mean? And so just being in this one sort of state of someone's being was really exciting, and I think it's really a testament to the directing and the writing that we can follow that nonlinear format.
Absolutely, yeah. Because, I mean, now you say it, sort of putting everything out of sequence makes it a lot more powerful because it's kind of like this puzzle piece you're putting together, and if you reveal stuff right away, it loses its power.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, this was a very effective movie. I like ominous atmospheric horror movies. We don't see enough of them, and this one certainly stands out from the pack.
Oh, cool.
So thank you very much for your
Yeah.
time.
Oh, thanks so much.
You
yeah,
bet.
thank you.
Thanks for the question.